Dozens of Texas Democrats facing the threat of arrest.
We're treated like fugitives on the run. So basically, they have to be inconspicuous, they have to hide.
As tension over the Texas elections bill hits a new high, one woman leads a marathon push to pause the bill.
What do we want our democracy to look like?
We go in depth with the state senator who led a high-profile filibuster, her message to Republican critics. The Delta surge has Texas hospitals looking for help from out of state. Why finding those medical workers is a lot harder this time around. Migrants move to cities far from the border. How concerns about COVID are fueling questions from state and local leaders.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. This week, tensions over the Texas elections bill reached a new level. Republican leaders raised the stakes for House Democrats still breaking quorum, leaving the chamber at a standstill for the past month. On Wednesday, we followed the House Sergeant at Arms as he served civil arrest warrants to the offices of the 52 absent Democrats. They left the state last month to block the Republican-led election bill. Republicans say the bill is still necessary to improve election integrity, and they're unhappy when Democrats describe the bill as voter suppression. House Democrat Ron Reynolds told us the warrants only add to the tension.
We're treated like fugitives on the run. So basically, they have to be inconspicuous, they have to hide and not be really, they're not safe at their home, or they can't go by their district office.
It's not as if anyone's going to jail or truly held against their will, but we want to bring people here to do their job.
Law enforcement officers in Texas have been deputized to find and arrest the members. They do not have jurisdiction outside the state, but several House Democrats who did return to Texas do face the threat of arrest. Before those warrants went out, Democrats Art Fierro, Mary Gonzalez, Joe Moody, and James Tallarico had actually returned to the chamber for the session. They say they're working for the people they represent, but they're facing a backlash on Twitter from some of those who stayed in D.C. Dallas Representative Jasmine Crockett accused them of trying to please the governor and his agenda. Representative Ana Maria Ramos tweeted a picture of Gonzalez, Moody, and Tallarico on the House floor, saying they threw their fellow Democrats under the bus. The situation with the walkout and the warrants has been changing rapidly. You can find the latest information on our website and coming up in our next newscast. As the arrest warrants were being delivered to Capitol offices, state senators started debating the bill that led Democrats to break quorum. Senate Democrats did not have the votes to stop the bill, but one woman led a high-profile protest to slow the progress down.
We as Texas Democrats have drawn a line in the sand to uphold the legacy of Lyndon Baines Johnson's work to protect the vote.
Houston State Senator Carol Alvarado launched a filibuster Wednesday evening. She spoke on the Senate floor for more than 15 hours, often reading testimonials from Texans concerned about how the bill could affect their ability to vote. Alvarado wrapped up her filibuster just before 9 o'clock on Thursday. 15 minutes later, the Senate passed the bill. For insight into the debate, we welcome Senator Alvarado. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
We've seen filibusters used to kill bills in the past by stalling beyond a deadline. That wasn't possible this time since the session still has weeks to go. Why was it important for you to filibuster now?
I think now there's a lot of momentum about this bill, and I certainly wanted to seize the moment and call attention to provisions in the bill that are still bad, to make sure that people know. And I think we achieved that during the filibuster. Let people know exactly what these things mean. And for example, the issue with the poll watchers and the signature verification. The signature verification is still very troublesome with our disabled community, people who have Parkinson's, people who have cerebral palsy. We had so many emails coming in throughout the night, throughout the morning about that. We asked people to share their stories. And that's what gave me the energy to keep going and keep standing for 15 hours.
Yeah, what kind of response have you received from the people you represent? What's it about the bill that your constituents are concerned about?
Well, the things that I just pointed out. And in Harris County, it's personal. Our leaders created some very innovative ways for people to vote during a pandemic, and they were a success. Over 10,000 people using the 24-hour voting. And these were first responders, shift workers, medical professionals, and the drive-through voting was a success. 60% of the people that utilized that were women because it was easy for them to pull around, come in, they've got their kids in the car, their elderly parent, and it was accessible for them. So it resulted in about 128,000 people using that. Times are changing. Just think about for example, when I was a kid going with my parents to vote, and you had those big machines with that big curtain. Well, things evolve. You keep up with the times, and people are busy. There's a pandemic. So I applaud Harris County for coming up with these initiatives. And by the way, those were all signed off by a bipartisan committee, Democrats and Republicans, who signed off on these new ways of voting during a pandemic.
Yes, but many Republicans have a different take on the bill, obviously. I want to play a clip from Senator Brian Hughes, who wrote the bill. He spoke a few moments after you wrapped up the filibuster, and so here's how he described Senate Bill 1.
Okay. Those of us who have read the bill know what's in it. Simple, common sense reforms and expanding early voting hours across the state. Yes, weekend hours as well. Making it easier for folks who have to work to vote. So your employer has to let you off work, not just for Election Day, but for early voting. And what about being in line and getting to vote? No protection today for early voting. It will be after Senate Bill 1 becomes law. A ballot cure process.
So he points to things in the bill that seem to make it easier for people to vote. Is he wrong? Why?
I disagree, and I have a lot of respect for Chairman Hughes. We're colleagues, we're friends. However, we have a very different view of this. By limiting the hours of the early voting, it's a cute way of going around getting away from the 24-hour voting. So because of the hours set, you can only vote between certain hours, 6 to 10 or 6 to 9 p.m. Then that does not allow, if any county wants to do 24-hour voting. And the other part that I'm very troubled with is empowering partisan poll watchers. Currently, the way the language reads in our law, they can be conveniently near. Now it's changing to allow them to freely roam around and get in between a voter and the election clerk, to be within a distance so that they can see and hear what is taking place between that voter and that clerk. That's a private matter. There's no reason for a partisan poll watcher to be that close. It's inviting what could be a confrontational environment. Some people might feel intimidated by that.
You spoke for more than 15 hours, but the bill did still pass. What did this accomplish?
Well, I tell you what, we have drawn some national attention, even more so, building on what our House Democrats started. I was with them in D.C. when they first left, and we gained some national attention about the bad provisions in this bill because it's happening all over the state, all of our country, mainly in states in the South. We want other legislative bodies to know that they have the ability to fight and bring attention to this. And Texas Democrats aren't going to take this line down. We're not going to roll over. We may not have the numbers, but by God, we're going to give it everything we can to fight about it and try to get some change.
All right, State Senator Carol Alvarado, thank you for sharing your time and insight.
Thank y'all.
Texas House Democrats need Congress to pass federal voting rights legislation, but that effort took a big hit this week.
It would profoundly undermine democracy in this country.
How a Texan played a key role in blocking the bill. The COVID crisis hits home for one state lawmaker.
How can we play Russian roulette with kids' lives? We should be taking every step necessary to protect children.
The message he's sending the governor after his young granddaughter tests positive. Hunting for medical help as COVID cases surge, the challenges and the response for Texas hospitals.